Hello, YouTube. Rejoice! The content gods have not forsaken us yet. They've once again provided, as always. So, we're going to go into this one. We're going to take a quick high level approach because I'm sure we can find a couple of minutes on Friday to talk about it a little bit more length. But the headline is exactly what it sounds like. eBay and collectors enter into a commercial agreement, sign deals for the acquisition of Goldin by eBay and the acquisition of eBay Vault by PSA. Now, on the surface, just really high level, the first thing that we can talk about here is that the whole Goldin acquisition was something that's kind of the worst kept secret out there. The word had been out on that one for a little bit. It was not so much a matter of if, it was a matter of when and what the terms and conditions were going to be and if there was anything else related to it. In this case, it was good that we all kind of held back and waited for the more specifics because in this case, there's a little bit more to it. And really what it comes down to, if I just take it at high level, and I'm going to go through a couple of elements of this from the PSA site here in their press release, and I'll include a link to that in the description if you want to read the whole thing. It is a lot of marketing copy, but there is some good details included in there. We'll touch on a few. But the real high level takeaway is the partnership between the two of them, which they also call a strategic partnership. But at the same time, really what it is they're kind of swapping certain assets. Because you've got the acquisition of the eBay Vault by PSA, which is going to come into play here in a second, and then the Goldin acquisition by eBay, and each one of them is getting something out of this deal. And we'll go into a little bit of how each one of them gets something. And for the people that it applies to, it could actually be pretty useful. But for the rest of us, life will go on as normal. But for this, a couple of specific use cases, I can definitely see that there's going to be some benefits to it depending on what you're trying to do. So with that said, let's start off by quickly scrolling through here a little bit. As I said, there's a lot of marketing copy hidden in between. This is a press release, so just bear that in mind when you go through it. So you got stuff like eBay and PSA have both long track records of innovation, service of the hobby, blah, blah, blah. You can kind of skip through some of that stuff and really get down to the specifics of what you're looking for. So one of the things that you want to look at here is the newly established partnership will combine complementary service offerings from each brand to remove friction from the hobby and power a sophisticated integrated program to buy, sell, grade, and store trading cards and collectible card games. So this, though, is the actual meat of this situation. Because of this swap of these two different things, each one of them kind of got something. From the eBay side of things, let's just start off with the Goldin acquisition. And really at high level, the very first thing it does for you is it takes what eBay already does, which is all these auctions at kind of the low to kind of mid-high tier level, and then adds to it the high end. Because when you think of the high-end sales, especially during the boom period, go back and look at those record sales. And where were they? They were on PWCC, they were on Heritage, they were on Goldin, they were on a variety of other platforms that weren't eBay. That isn't to say that you can't sell expensive cards on eBay. Of course you can. But when you had a lot of those 6 and 7 figure and above sales, you were looking in other auction houses as opposed to thinking about eBay. So eBay has the low to mid end kind of covered. But then as far as the high end is concerned, they didn't really have anything. Well, then by adding Goldin to it, you automatically add that level. And they do reference it and kind of phrase it in that way. But just at a high level, thinking about that from eBay's perspective, it makes sense for them to have that additional option because then you got it covered from the low end all the way up to the high end. And that is also touched here on this line right here. eBay's agreement to acquire Goldin, a leading US-based auction house for high-value trading cards and collectibles, will enhance existing marketplace offerings by expanding the range of inventory available to customers and opening up an expansive new audience for Goldin sellers. This will enable a more well-rounded experience across price points. And that really is the key, getting the price points covered from top to bottom. And then from PSA and collectors' perspective, you've got this. Additionally, PSA will introduce a new service offering to allow customers to list and sell trading cards on eBay at the time that a card is graded, accelerating time to market and the quality of listing. Existing options for grading and sale will remain available. So really, from a PSA's perspective, acquiring the eBay Vault, what it really means is that you can kind of go end to end. As I said, for the rank and file collector, day to day, this isn't really changed life. But if you're somebody who's going to submit cards to PSA anyway, and your intention was always to sell it, possibly on eBay, then this actually saves you a step. And it also brings them in line with what platforms have already started doing. PWCC had the same thing. They had a couple of partnerships where you could submit a card in for grading, and then as soon as you did that, you could immediately already have it in the vaulting area, and then be able to immediately shift it over and put it into a PWCC auction. ComC has a similar idea to this where they've got their own partnerships for grading as well with CGC and PSA as well. And if you took something in the platform, got it graded, well then you've got a couple of options. You can keep it there, you can sell it directly on the ComC platform, or you could flip it over and put it onto eBay. So it kind of creates this idea of having the vault as kind of the middleman. You send the item in for grading and then it sits in the vault where you can either have it shipped to yourself or you can put it into some kind of an auction or in a selling platform of some kind. That's the part where it kind of reduces the friction. And then from the selling standpoint, if your goal is to go and grade to sell, then this makes a lot of sense from that perspective. As I said, if you're just submitting a card in for yourself and for your personal collection, then obviously you're not going to use this, so it's not going to affect you. But for somebody who is in that category, anything that saves a little bit of time, especially when a player is maybe on the rise because of something that's going on with them in season, something's happening, you get the card graded, like the Connor Bedard thing. When folks are submitting some of those Connor Bedards to get it on sale as soon as possible, something like this would have even expedited it further, because you could have used accelerated grading. You get it graded almost immediately, and then it's already sitting on the platform. You press a button and it's already sitting there in an eBay auction. So you could be literally first to market and give yourself the best chance to try to sell it for the maximum amount while everybody else is playing catch up because they're having to wait for the item to come back to them. So it's one of those things where just reducing that little extra step, if your goal is to grade to sell, then it can be something that can be useful to you. Otherwise, you just send in your grading like normal and then just operate as you would have otherwise. So this last paragraph here in this section we'll read over so that we can touch on that as well. So PSA has also agreed to acquire the eBay Vault, as we just talked about, while maintaining a seamless access to Vault services for eBay's US customers. There will be no immediate changes to the service provided for a period of time post-closing. After the deal closing, PSA will fold its existing Vault services along with eBay Vault program into a newly branded offering with further details coming. So that's going to be the next shoe to drop, because that's where we're going to have to see what that looks like, because we're looking at what are the fees, what's the situation with that. That's the number one thing. We want to know what the fees are. We're talking about eBay, so we want to know what are the costs going to be, what are the fees going to be, who's going to charge what, and how that's going to work out. And as it said, further details coming, including integrated selling and grading services, which is kind of what we alluded to a minute ago. So we'll get the additional details, but just on the surface, that was kind of the obvious play. As soon as you're rolling it into that, you're creating that opportunity to be able to have more seamless version of selling, where again, if that's your goal, then obviously you don't really need to touch the card again. Because if your goal is really just to grade, just to sell, then getting it back to you just to have to relist the thing is a bit of a hassle. It's obviously been done for a long time and nobody really had an issue with it, but then just reducing that additional step makes a lot of sense for you because, well, it's graded, now it's ready to go. I just want to sell it, then get it put on the platform as soon as possible. From eBay's perspective, I understand that adding a high-end element to it makes a lot of sense because it just allows them to cover the whole gamut from low-end to high-end and everything in between. And it just makes already the big marketplace a little bit bigger. So both of them are kind of getting something out of it. So really, at the end of this, if you really want to break it down, what it comes down to is it's a strategic partnership where PSA and eBay are kind of doing business with each other to have that integrated service. eBay likes it because obviously they're going to get more stuff on their platform, and they basically swapped assets. Collector/PSA gets the eBay Vault and all that related to it, and then just rolls it into its own vaulting service. And then eBay gets the high-end auction house that they need in order to kind of fill out their offerings. So they swap those two assets and then kind of have a partnership in between so that they both get to make money. PSA gets to potentially encourage a few more grading fees by making it a little bit easier for somebody that's already looking to sell. And then eBay gets additional listings because if somebody just has to push a button, it's already in the vault and then directly go into an auction, it makes it a little bit more seamless for that person to consider that option if the opportunity presents itself. And it gives them a competitive thing to go up against what Fanatics set up with their PWCC, where they had that element of it, and any other auction houses in the space. So those are some initial high-level thoughts based on this thing. As I said, I'll include a link to this article in the description for you with the press release so you can take a look at it yourself. It covers a lot of the elements that you expect, a lot of quotes from Ken Goldin, from Nat Turner, from the eBay CEO. A lot of those pieces are included in kind of the standard stuff that you expect that's going to be handed off to Wall Street and details of the transaction. But I think it's interesting. It's one of those things where I think that this is the kind of movement in the space that I kind of expect, because a lot of these companies are looking for ways of covering all the different angles. Basically, they want to be all things at all times, combining the grading, the vaulting, and the selling. And anything they can do, whether it's a partnership or whether it's acquiring something that allows them to have those additional things, that's basically how you try to generate income from all angles in the hobby space. So no surprise, and at least it definitely gives us something to talk about. So I think we'll find a little time on Friday to discuss this a little bit more length. But that's it for me for now. More videos come up on the channel, live streams on Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we'll talk about hobby-related things, including, I guess, this one. And we'll see what else comes down the pipeline now that the content gods have blessed us once again. With that said, like if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much, and we'll catch you in the next one.